Hello everyone, P. McGee here with another draft battle analysis video and recap. This time looking at my week 4 match in the PGF, in which I face off against 123berber and their scruffy, fluffy things. As it stands, I am 2-1 in this league, having bounced back nicely after a poor performance in week 1 and getting a bit of a win streak going on. I have found continued success with Mega Mawile and Entei. I'm looking to get some better utility out of Landorus, who has underperformed so far, and then make some additional usage out of my Chestnut, who I was very excited to draft in this format. So, before we get into this match, we're going to take a look at the team I had or the team they had available to them, and then the pieces I brought to best address it. So, they've got a couple of scary, interesting things to deal with. Spectrier, normally on paper, is pretty horrifying to contest with week to week. I, however, have Umbreon, and Spectrier just simply doesn't have a way to deal with that. So I fully expect Spectrier not to come or to have a very difficult performance if it's going to show up, just because it has a hard time breaking through Umbreon. And I still have other pieces I can utilize as well, like Florges, plus things like Sucker Punch on a Mega Mawile. All in all, not a great position for it to be in. Megalopony, very wary of the fact that Megalopony can do a lot of damage to this team and does not care about Umbreon. However, Chestnut is just in a really good position to address that. We'll get more into that during the team build. Talonflame, not overly scary. It has potential with like a Swords Dance set, but that struggles to set up in front of something like Umbreon because of foul play that can easily one-hit KO it after a Swords Dance. So it's going to have limited utility in that regard, and maybe better service as hazard control. We'll see what shows up. Hatterene, not something I put a ton of consideration into just because it has a really hard time dealing with Mega Mawile unless it's going to set Trick Room. Just because I can easily outspeed it. I have Stab to one-hit KO it with Iron Head if I choose to run that. Play Rough will still do massive amounts of damage even without it. Knock Off will do lots of damage. So Hatterene just has a hard time pressuring some of my better options on my team, and so I don't know how great of a matchup it has. Gastron is actually fairly concerning. It's able to absorb a hit from Mega Mawile and can do good amounts of damage back with Earth Power, or it can try to fish for a Scald Burn. It has ways of threatening me that are obviously concerning. Zarude doesn't have good stab options to deal with Mega Mawile. It has access to Stomping Tantrum as like a ground type move to try to hit it for some good damage with, but that needs some setup for Zarude to be able to break through the Mega Mawile before the Mega Mawile breaks it. So, not in a great position overall. Not loving my Entei that I would have to deal with just because I have a good speed tier and I resist its Power Whip, and it doesn't have a super strong powered Darkest Lariat. So, it doesn't want to be dealing with Sacred Fire or the burn rate with that. Azumarill, actually very concerning. I don't have great answers for Play Rough. I'm very worried about Belly Drum sets. I need to consider my ways around Azumarill very carefully, just because it's nearly in a position to spam Play Rough, and I'm almost relying on Entei to discourage it from just spamming a move freely. Smeargle, not super worried about it. It incentivizes me to carry some defog just to address it in case it shows up and puts webs down. But it's not in a great position to pressure my team, especially if I run Chestnut, just since it can't do any sort of spore shenanigans on turn 1 to put something to sleep. So as long as I have Chestnut, I'm not worried about the Smeargle taking too much advantage of me. The Excadrill, pretty good matchup against me overall. Obviously threatens something like my Mega Mawile pretty hard. Does not like my Landorus though. Doesn't like my Chestnut too much. I think it has Poison Jab to kind of pressure Chestnut a little bit, but all in all, it's not loving that situation just because I have fighting moves to work with. Something like Drain Punch can do a lot of damage. You get health back. Hoopa, same problems as Spectrier, just even worse of a tier. Really easily, reliably one-hit KO'd by foul play, so just not liking its matchup overall in that regard. Pincurchin, some gimmick with it, not really expecting it to show up, but it's there as a terrain setter if he wants it. So with that in mind, the team I kind of assembled to handle a lot of these things was Mega Mawile, obviously. Opting for Intimidate again this week because a lot of things don't want to eat that Intimidate on entry, and it gives me a free window to do something like click Swords Dance. And if I can get a Swords Dance early in this game, the combination of Sucker Punch and Play Rough is just really, really punishing for this team. I believe Megalopony is about the only thing that can come in and pressure me out at that point. Zarude's not in a position to one-hit KO me. Azumarill could. A Banded Liquidation set could. I don't try to speed creep for it because I expect that Azumarill will speed creep to account for Mega Mawile, and we can do it. We get basically a speed creep off, and I don't want to waste a lot of EVs to ultimately be wrong because I don't want to have to go Jolly to try for a speed tie. I don't see the value in that. So I opt not to do it and instead just go for bulk so I can take a hit if I need to. I do a little bit of speed creep, not even a little bit. I throw 8 in there just to give myself something. Maybe in case Hatterene tried speed creeping an uninvested set, or if Azumarill for some reason had no speed investment at all, then I would creep past it. But I fully expect to be slower than the Azumarill going into this match. Play rough, knock off, sucker punch, sword stance. Pretty standard overall. Landorus, back to the choice scarf. Uh, I'm looking at the team preview. I want to go faster than Megalopony. This ensures that I do. Puts me in a good position to go faster than Spectrier if it shows up. I'm speed crept to outspeed the Megalopony so by 1 point, so I'm just as fast as I need to be in that regard. Still able to run the Adamant Nature, which is obviously very nice. Earthquake knockoff, Rock Slide U-turn. Rock Slide over Stone Edge because the only thing it's really for is the Talonflame, and Rock Slide will be plenty sufficient for that. And then U-turn's obviously going to do massive amounts of damage to the Zarude if the situation arises. Umbreon, kind of a mixed spread, a little bit invested into its speed stat, namely because if I run into Belly Drum Azumarill, I want to creep it. I'm creeping its creep essentially. I don't go all the way up to 199. I debated going all the way up to 199 or 200 so I could outspeed Adamant, max speed Azumarill. I don't opt for that. I instead try to see if he's going to creep my Umbreon and just my Umbreon and keep some in bulk. And then the rest is basically into defense, a little bit sprinkled into special defense to help deal with some Focus Blast possibilities from the Hoopa if it were to show up. And then Foul Play, Wish, Protect, Heal Bell, just trying to keep my team healthy in case I run into something I don't want to deal with early game like Spores or Toxics. And then otherwise just Wish Passing. The Chestnut running a Rocky Helmet because Chestnut with that defensive spread will not be 2-hit KO by any stab from the Lopunny. The only way the Lopunny can 2-hit KO the Chestnut is with Triple Axle. And Triple Axle comes at the huge cost of him losing 96% of his health to take down the Chestnut with the Triple Axles, because I believe it's going to take all 3 kicks both times for it to go down. So it's really a lose-lose because Chestnut's main goal is to shut down the Lopunny in this match. Bulletproof is even extra little bits of coverage because it shuts down Shadow Ball Spectrier, basically forces it into a Will-O-Wisp Hex set, which is easier to play around. It doesn't do as much damage, and it requires the Will-O-Wisp to be thrown out. It takes away stub sets a lot of the time, or nasty plot sets. Much easier to manage around when it doesn't have some of those coverage options it wanted to have. And then Synthesis to get health back. So if the Lopunny tries to go for a close combat or a return to try to 3-hit KO me, then I'm just going to keep Synthesizing in front of it and just let it lose its health. Spikes if I don't have to deal with the Hatterene anymore, then I can start spike stacking if I'm not worried about the hazards coming in. Seed Bomb just for good coverage as a stab option. And then Rock Slide on predicted Talonflame switch-ins. I don't think it'll 1-hit KO unless it's pure offense, but it'll do a lot of damage. It'll give me a free opportunity to switch out to Rotom while the Talonflame's forced to roost, and then I maintain momentum. Rotom, going for mostly a more supportive set. Volt Switch, Hydro Pump is the 2 stab options. I pivot pretty nicely because nothing really wants to come in on the Volt Switch, except for Gastrodon. If Gastrodon does show up, I have Toxic for the Gastrodon specifically. And then Defog to clear out any hazards I don't want to deal with, namely in case the Smeargle shows up and tries to put webs down, because webs are problematic for me a bit. And then finally, the Entei, running a Power Herb set because I'm looking at the team he has available to him. I could see things like Gastrodon showing up. And so if Gastrodon is the answer to Entei, then Entei clicks Sacred Fire on it. Gastrodon stays in, and then I click Solar Beam, and Solar Beam pretty reliably is going to 1-hit KO unless it's Rindo Berry, it'll be 1-hit KO'd by the Solar Beam. So I'm playing on the expectation that Gastrodon's going to show up, and this is just a good answer to it. I'm doing it at the sacrifice of some of my special defense stats, which will be relevant in this match. And then Stone Edge is coverage for the Talonflame, and Extreme Speed just as late game options for weakened things like the Megalopony in case I need to take it down late game, or the Azumarill in case the Azumarill starts taking off with like a belly drum set. At least I have an option to put some damage on it. So the combination of Extreme Speed from that, plus Mawile with Sucker Punch, plus Chestnut with the Rocky Helmet set and Spiky Shield should be enough to deal with any sort of Azumarill that shows up. But that's the team. That's what I generally put together and was trying to address in this matchup. Entei, also serves a very needed role as just a answer to play rough. Obviously I have Mawile as a switch in as well on that, but I just needed extra coverage from Azumarill spamming play rough because Umbreon doesn't survive that. Chestnut doesn't really take it very well. Rotom's not enjoying it either, and Landorus isn't in a great position for it in general, even though it gets the intimidation pressure on it. It doesn't want to eat a liquidation in case that comes out instead. So I needed extra bits of protection to force Azumarill into some guessing games early so that I was in a position to at least make 50-50 plays and see if I can get those to my advantage. But that's the team I brought. We're going to dive into this match and kind of break it down and how it plays out. So going into the match, I opt for a Landorus lead. I don't see much harm in that. The only other thing that can lead and be faster than me outright would be the Talonflame, which would not like the intimidation, or the Zarude, and I have a better 1v1 against Zarude. I also see in team preview that he has Smeargle. Smeargle has a very good reason to want to lead here. So I know it's probably Sash. I know I can't one-hit KO it. I know it probably wants to do Spore and then Sticky Webs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lead Landorus because Landorus is going to be faster than the Smeargle. It can very safely U-turn, will not activate a Sash. It's not likely to get it all the way chipped down to that point yet. And then I can pivot safely into the Chestnut. And when I do that, I get some protection from the Spore. So I don't get Spored on turn 1. I know he might switch to Hatterene, so I go for a Seed Bomb on turn 2, expecting that could switch in, and at the very least, I would kill Smeargle in case Smeargle decides to set webs and then die. Hatterene comes in. Hatterene's obviously going to force me out into Entei, where I'm going to try to create some pressure. Entei's usability in this match is also considerably lower, having gotten into the team preview. Excadrill doesn't show up. Gastrodon's not there to bait out and try to get with the Solar Beam tech. Zarude is obviously there, and I want to be able to hit Zarude, but I have other ways of addressing Zarude. It's not just Entei I need to do that job. And then, there's nothing else really that I wanted to be able to hit with it. I would be faster than the Hoopa, and Hoopa has a really weak defense stat, so that'd be nice. But a lot of the pieces I really wanted Entei to pressure just simply aren't here in this match, and so Entei's viability is down a little bit. The Future Sight catches me off guard. Interesting tech. I force out the Protect so I can safe switch into the Umbreon. I'm very concerned he has like a calm mindset on that, and I don't want to be in a position where it sets up too much in front of me. The Talonflame U-turns does a lot of damage, confirms to me that the Talonflame is definitely offensive, because I'm a mostly defensive Umbreon, and Talonflame only has a base 80 attack stat, so this is already indicating that it's pretty much probably max attack and maybe adamant nature. It has some incentive to want to run Jolly to make sure it outspeeds Greninja, but it implies to me that it's just a very offensive Talonflame, which it means I need to keep Umbreon and my Rotom as healthy as possible to deal with that. Future Sight again from the Hatterene. He's trying to pressure me. At this point, I'm going to double down on Sacred Fire on the expectation he either switches or it does just a bunch of damage to stop this Hatterene from Future Sight spamming. Again, I'm negative special defense nature, so I'm just eating this damage. I didn't really consider that when going in for this KO attempt here, or at least high damage attempt on the Hatterene. I had not accounted for the fact that my Bedef stat was extra low. It's only a natural 75, and then I have a negative nature on top of it. I don't even think the critical hit from the Future Sight matters. I think I just outright die to that. So I end up losing Entei really early in this game just to try to create a window for momentum. But Entei going down creates an opportunity for Mega Mawile to come in here and to get free pressure. And so it's able to come in and then click knockoff to do good amounts of damage to the Mega Lopunny. Mega Lopunny U-turns, eats more damage from the Rocky Helmet on my Chestnut. Talonflame comes in. Obviously, I need to run away from the Talonflame. I don't want to give it a window to Swords Dance either, so I need to go into Rotom, who just pressures it out really nicely. Because he doesn't bring his Excadrill, I have a very easy window to Volt Switch here and just create massive amounts of momentum because the Talonflame doesn't want to eat that Volt Switch. It's not bulky at all. It's probably going to be nearly KO'd, if not outright KO'd. I essentially force the Talonflame out. I create a free window for me to Volt Switch safely. Zarude obviously wants to come in here. I expected as much. I opt to come in, and this is a mistake in game, I realize in hindsight. I come in with Mega Mawile here because part of me is worried that the Talonflame might be Flame Body. I'm not positive either way. It could still be offensive and run Flame Body, just expecting to be chipped and not being in a position to get around that and just relying on its natural speed stat to get it past the Gale Wings and not having that to work with. So I want to be extra cautious about burning my Landorus early, and so I come in with Mega Mawile just because I know Talonflame really isn't in a position to survive any one attack from Mega Mawile. In hindsight, I think I should have gone Landorus. I think Landorus just creates more momentum in general. I do get him to throw away his Smeargle very early in this game, which is fortunate for me. The Hatterene comes in. Hatterene, I don't know why Hatterene comes in here. This is just a really bad switch in. Hatterene's naturally slower than Mega Mawile. Unless he tried creeping my speed and only crept it by 4 points, then he gets out-crept again. But the bulk of the Hatterene suggests that it was just really defensive set. So I don't know why Hatterene comes in here. I think that's a strong misplay by the opponent because he sacks Hatterene for absolutely nothing. Literally nothing was gained on that turn. He just lost another Mon. Talonflame forces me out. Azumarill kind of forces me out. And then the Mega Lopunny can create some pressure, but nothing was really gained there. So it was just an odd decision. See, Talonflame comes in now, makes much more sense. That was what he should have done before. U-turns, comes in with the Mega Lopunny, which again is a mistake. He has not scouted for whether or not Landorus is a Scarf. Presumably, he should imagine it is. Landorus likes to run Scarfs. It has reasons to in this matchup to get past the Zarude, to get past the Lopunny, to get past the Spectrier. And so he should really be trying to scout for that before bringing Lopunny in. He doesn't, and so I'm going to sack Lopunny here because that was a misplay. And the thing about that play is it should confirm to him outright that I'm a Scarf. I mean, that should be very apparent, which means it's a free window for either Talonflame or Zarude to come in and do things because I am forced to switch out on either of them. The Azumarill comes in, and I know there is real danger of me being destroyed by a Belly Drum Azumarill, so I need to 1v1 this. I can't afford to retreat and give it a free turn to do something, because if it Belly Drums and I give it that free turn, I might outright lose the game. So I need to stay in here. I decided to Earthquake, 64%. The Citrus Berry gets procced, confirms that it's definitely a Belly Drum set. It brings it down to 11%, and the nice thing about being 11% is that the Azumarill really doesn't have a move that doesn't generate contact, and so I know I can just throw away my Chestnut and confirm this Azumarill being KO'd right here. I don't need Chestnut for the other two pieces in this game. He serves no purpose for addressing either Talonflame or Zarude. I mean, he can go for a Rock Slide on Talonflame just to scare it out and try to do massive amounts of damage, but if Talonflame one-hit KOs it, I also don't care. So I flee into the Chestnut just because I don't need him anymore. He makes that successful call. Good read on his part, because if he had gone for Aqua Jet and I had stayed in with Landorus, he would have killed the Landorus. But he at least takes the Chestnut down with him, so he at least creates a 1-for-1, but I'm fine making that trade. And so I know Landorus comes in safely on what's ever on the field. The Talonflame comes back out. He should honestly be switching out, expecting a Rock Attack, because Landorus has reasons to carry a Rock Attack, but he stays in. I hit the Rock Slide. The Talonflame does get KO'd here. I come in with Mega Mawile because that's the safest switch in at this point. I could come in and try to Toxic with the Rotom, but I'm worried he could have Jungle Healing to get around the Toxic stall, and I don't have any other way of dealing with it with the Rotom. And then Umbreon can't really foul play a bulk up set, which is what he decides to run. So I need to come in with Mega Mawile. Unfortunately, Mega Mawile is going to do an obnoxious thing and miss. Really, really unfortunate. And then that puts me in a weird bind here. What I should be doing here is just accepting the fact that Mawile is going to go down and not trying to do anything sneaky. I'm going to go for a Sucker Punch here. No reason I should do that. It's just not going to do a lot of damage, especially with Leftovers healing. It's just negligible. I should click Play Rough in case he tries to bulk up again so that I really damage his health considerably. I Sucker Punch, regrettable mistake, gives the Zarude another window to click bulk up. He's going to KO my Mawile this time. Landorus comes in, at least gets its attack stat down again. U-turn does a massive amount of damage because I was able to run that Adamant Nature. Really unfortunate here that the Power Whip misses. It's odd to say that it's unfortunate the Zarude doesn't KO my Rotom, but it is a really unfortunate scenario, because if he KOs Rotom here, I'm able to come back in with Landorus, and I know I do enough damage after that Leftovers healing for the next U-turn to kill the Zarude. So what's going to end up happening here is I'm going to let it survive an extra turn, let it get 2 more chances to get Leftovers healing. And because of that, it's now out of range for my U-turn to KO it. It's not very strong now. I can U-turn again successfully, brings it down to 9%. Umbreon comes in. It's going to bulk up again to try to set up again. I know I can't foul play this. It has way too high of a defensive stat at this point for even me attempting foul plays. It only has a 1.5 attack stat because of Intimidate. So I'm just going to flee straight back to Landorus because I know it's not going to do 94% to a Landorus at no attack boost. And then I know at this point U-turn is going to do enough to KO it. Really roundabout way to close out that game. The miss on the play rough was really unfortunate. It, depending on the investment in this route, it might have outright KO'd it. It would have at least put it down to 10% if it had been very, very bulky. So it got extra turns to do things. Ultimately, the only big impact of that is it messes up the differential. So it takes it from a 4-0 to a 2-0, which hopefully won't be meaningful in the course of the season as I now move to 3-1 in much better control of my playoff standing. I have a couple of important head to heads going my way right now. I have a solid overall differential. I believe it is +7. So I'm in an okay spot overall. Just a unfortunate thing where I missed out on some differential that might be helpful later in the season. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. But very happy with the performance. Landorus got a chance to shine again. It wasn't a very exciting set. Scarf isn't that exciting, but it did exactly the job it was supposed to do. It outsped everything it needed to outspeed. It got to spam buttons pretty reliably. Chestnut served its role in shutting down the Lopunny, and it dealt with the Azumarill mid-late game as well. I guess it theoretically could have bothered the Zarude a lot because Zarude just didn't really have a way to deal with the Spiky Shield Rocky Helmet set. I think we confirmed that it has U-turn is the only way to do any sort of neutral damage to the Chestnut. So it's actually entirely possible the Chestnut could have stood there and survived the whole time. And I could have been using Landorus as a way to keep intimidating it so it just runs out of bulk ups. But overall, happy with the performance. Happy that all my pieces got some good utility. I misused Entei this game. Honestly, not a big deal in hindsight because it showcases that Entei isn't going to be the focal point of my team. It highlights that other pieces have value to serve. I know how to use the Landorus now. I've proven that this game. Mega Mawile was in a position to get another kill. It could have gotten 3 kills this match. It missed the kill on Zarude, unfortunately, but Mega Mawile continues to be potent, and I keep highlighting my team's ability to pivot pretty freely into the Mawile, which is always going to be a concern for opponents trying to deal with that week to week. So 3-1. I am happy with how things are. I don't have any major changes in mind for this team going forward. I'm content with where it stands right now. Their only real issue of note is that I have an open speed tier gap from 100 to the 122. If I can find a cheap way to patch that up later this season, I might take a look at that. The Reggie Drago might be an expendable piece. It's like the one item I haven't brought yet that I could, excluding Trapinch, who doesn't really count. So I'll probably tinker around with that as the season goes on to see if I can fit anything in that slot. But for now, very content. I'll be back next week for the next video. Stay tuned.